So today we have an interesting topic because it's something that we all have seen and it's relevant, which is the bracha of Erusin. So I'm sure everybody has seen some of the sources or all the sources that I sent out. Let's start with maybe Yavni. You want to read the Gemara in Ketubot Daf Zayin Amud Bet. And
Sure.
it's actually a very simple sugya in a sense because there's just one source in the Gemara. So everybody has the Ketubot Zayin Amud Bet. And there's two sections. One I gave you from Gufa, Amar Rav Nachman, and we'll read just the beginning of that, and then we'll skip to the second section.
Okay.
So Yavni, can you read it to us?
Sure. Gufa, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar li Huna bar Natan, Tana, minayin levarcha לברכת חתנים בעשרה, שנאמר, ויקח 10 אנשים מזקני העיר, ויאמר, שבו פה. So we have a baraita from where do we know that we do the bracha for marriage with a minyan of 10 from the verse in Megillat Ruth that where Boaz at the end takes 10 people from the elders of the city to witness the act. ורבי אבאו אמר מיהכה במקהלות ברכו אלוקים השם ממקור ישראל. And Rabbi Abahu learns it from a different source from Tehillim, where it says in choruses, bless God from the source of Israel.
Right. So first of all, what is Birkat Chatanim that we're talking about here? That has to have 10 people in it. That's the first thing we need to clarify. What do you think? Anyone want to venture an idea?
It's Rashi gives one answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
כשנכנסה לחופת נישואין. Oh,
right,
sorry. That's not right. Never mind.
Well, based on your knowledge, what does it mean?
The bracha, they give a nusach for it later on. It's the bracha on the wedding taking place.
Is it
which bracha? Which bracha? You might think it's actually not our topic. It's actually not the Birkat
it's
Erusin. It's the brachot, the Sheva brachot. This is talking about the Sheva brachot, which are called Birkat Chatanim. That's the term in the Talmud for it. Birkat Chatanim, like literally, I guess you could say grooms or if you call Chatuna as a wedding, so wedding blessings. Yeah. So these are the Sheva brachot that we're talking about. They need 10. Now they bring two different sources. What can anybody give me a homiletic explanation of what the difference in meaning of these two sources is? Like if you had to give a vort on what the two different sources here are, what would you say? What are the two different meanings here? In other words, what does it matter if it's this source or that source, aside from the halachic discussion?
One seems to be referring to a marital situation. Megillat Ruth is trying to sort of clarify what would be a kosher wedding, whereas the source in Tehillim is more, I think, relating just to an idea of a minyan bichlal needed to have a public prayer.
Right. So I think very, very good. I think that the second one is general. Every we need, it's almost like it's a Devar Kedusha, right? Makolot Baruch Hashem, right? You need a Makelah to bless God, and here you're blessing God. This is some kind of a holy convocation, as opposed to the first one, which is more about gathering together the people for wedding, particular to weddings. And why would you want to gather people for a wedding?
To be witnesses?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, in addition to the two witnesses, which is for Kiddushin. Remember, we're after Kiddushin. We're the Birkat Chatuna. So what? It's not witnesses, but right, but yeah, to sort of like Pirsuma Denisa, like not a nace, but to the farsem the matter.
I'm wondering if it's also connected to the source from Tehillim. The idea of a public, the second source we were saying it's within a public forum to praise Hashem. This is what you need. And so we're saying that that's also what's needed for the Kiddushin.
Right, but like you said, it's a more general. It's a more general.
But it's saying within that general sense, you still can't have this something of Kiddusha from the Kiddushin without that general. The two witnesses isn't enough. That doesn't cut it. It needs to be in the kahala, or as they call it, makelah.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the second part of the Gemara. I'm skipping a little bit here to the second part of the Gemara is Tana Rabbanan.
The Tosfot read on the page that I have gives like a more specific explanation for what they're joshing exactly about the pasuk, that the makor is. I think that's what he's going for. Is like makor is referring to is being drashed to refer to the womb, I think, and therefore it's like about pu'uvu. That's what I could thought he was saying. Yeah.
So it's definitely related to weddings, right? You're right.
And like a very particular aspect of the wedding, like the fact that it's about
it's about a mitzvah purvu.
Right. I guess.
And in that sense, wait, let's take that. And in that sense, the second one is more about it being a mitzvah. If we make that contrast, then what would the first one be about? The first one is just publicizing it. In other words, one, it's almost like it's a birkat mitzvah, which we're going to get into. That's what I want to talk about, actually. Is this a birkat mitzvah? But really, I want to talk about the irusin in that context. But yeah, and in the first one, it could be about purvu. According to the second pasuk in Tehillim, it could be about purvu, and then maybe it's a bracha related to a mitzvah. But you don't need a minyan for a bracha and a mitzvah. But yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I was wondering whether we could sort of lean on Ziknei Ha'ir as like, it's like almost got a sort of judicial feel to it, right? It's like this needs to be sort of approved by the leaders of the community, as opposed to like,
right.
Sort of Am Yisrael blesses God together, and it's not about like some.
Or it needs to be, or the best way to publicize it is if you take a representative from each family. There's one zaken of each clan, and you bring them all together, and then it becomes public. Like, in the Jungle Book, they have to approve the entry of Mowgli into the Kahal. They need the zakenim have to approve this. So you have to approve this wedding among the elders.
Right, or like, I don't know. I mean,
wow.
In a lot of like American contexts, when you want to get like civilly married, you have to go to some like office with like a person.
It has to be public. It has to be public knowledge. Exactly. Either it's written down in a book. Rabbi Landis, you like my book?
Fine. 10 Zakanim seems to. Well, the Rav always you see microcosm of the community, and it's as much a community. It's microcosm of the cloud. It's a microcosm of the cloud, and has the authority and wherewithal to have prayer, to make demands upon God. You don't make the same demands. It hasn't had the same impact when it's two people, it's one person or three person or whatever. And therefore, in this context, as you say, it is not only effective. That's what I would say. Finally, going to get to it. Only more effective than 2 or 3 or 4 in Klal Yisrael. And that's all. That's what you have. You have here the microcosm of Klal Yisrael, and the microcosm in the sense of as effective as Klal Yisrael. It's not that everyone does. That's Klal Yisrael. I think I finally got it. That's what I meant. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, but let's go. I want to go on with the second part of the Gemara, which is Tana Rabbanan Mevarchim Birkat Chatanim Bebeit Chatanim. So this is also talking about the Sheva Brachot.
תנו רבנן, מברכים ברכת חתנים בבית חתנים, רבי יהודה אומר, אף בבית האירוסין מברכים אותה. So the Braita says that we do it in the house of the wedding, and Rabbi Yehuda says also in the house of the betrothal.
Right. So in other words, this is saying when you remember that they used to do the Erusin about a year before the chuppah, and he's saying, so Rabbi Yehuda is saying, when they did the Erusin, they also said Sheva Brachos. They also said Sheva Brachos at the Erusin.
Right.
Okay.
אמר אביי, וביהודה שנו, מפני שמתייחד עמה. And Abai specifies that the saying of the Bracha in the Beit Erusin was Davka in the area of Yehuda because they would do Yichud after the Kiddushin, not just after the...
Not after the chuppah.
Yeah, the chuppah.
So they would do Sheva Brachos because they would do the Yichud right away. It's very strange. Look at Rashi. The Rashi also is a little bit strange. Maybe you can help me with this Rashi. שמתייחד עמה.
שמתייחד עמה. באירוסין, כדי שיהיה ליבו גס בה.
Yeah, I don't understand this. What does he mean? Kedei, in order that his heart, that he should be comfortable with her. Right, we saw this libo gasba as referring to, we saw it last week, as referring to a man's attitude towards his wife after he divorced her, or right after he's been with her, so he's more comfortable with her. Why would we do this in order to make him more comfortable with her?
Or right. An example you gave is he they nonetheless remain comfortable with each other, even though they're divorced. They're intimate. They're not intimate. Okay.
But
and this is a way
of bringing each other. But here it's talking about the Shemitz Yached Ima, like intentionally they put them together to sort of ease their nerves, I guess, so that they should be Sarah.
Yeah, when Joel and I were learning this, he suggested that it might be that they're like afraid that they're not going to go all the way through with the Nisuin, and so they need to like make them like kind of want to be together so that then they'll actually like stick around for the last part.
It's dafka because it's such. I think Joel's right. Joel, it sounds right to me. So, there's dafka in Yehuda where they would wait a year. They would do this because they were afraid that it would the people would get sick of waiting and they would find other partners, or they would do something else. So they sort of put a little spark into the relationship. Okay. So that's why they would say Sheva Bracha. So continue the Rashi.
לפיכך מברכים ברכת חתנים מתחילה, דתניא במסכת קלה, קלה בלא ברכה, אסורה לבעלה כנידה.
Right. So there's so they would do this right away. They wouldn't wait. It almost sounds like, I guess, because they wanted to give him this, they wanted to give the bracha to take away this isser, right? In other words, kala below bracha, without the sheva brachot, is asura l'bala kenida. So he's not, almost like they want them to have relations together, which is very strange. In other words, there's an isser for them to have relations. They're treated like a nida until they get these brachot. So they wanted to do the brachot right away. I'm a little bit confused. I don't quite understand it. They wanted the brachot right away so that they would feel comfortable and that the isser would be taken away. But what are they trying to have them have relations? So they're not married yet. I don't understand. I don't quite understand. Maybe somebody has an insight. Sarah?
I just have more confusion, which is not useful, but I just don't understand in this scenario what the nisuin would even be. They're doing yichud and sheva brachot.
Oh,
So then
because
what is
then
the nisuin?
because they're not living in the house.
The nisuin is just them living in the house.
They're not. Yeah, she's still in her father's house. They haven't done a chuppah. They haven't done a chuppah yet. Yeah, they haven't done a chuppah. It's definitely not nisuin yet, but they're doing the sheva brachas early because they wanted to because they gave that because they wanted to have them have yichud early. And then once they're doing yichud, they want to have everything like, maybe, I guess it's maybe it's a safety precaution. In case something happens that it shouldn't, but in case something does, the bracha should already be there, already and set.
So everything's like kind of above board.
Right, if something happens. Okay.
Right, one assumes that she's also, if that's the logic, she should also be going to mikvah too, which is like not discussed here, but.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
Are we sure that they didn't condone sex in that period between?
Right. I don't know. I don't know exactly. I doubt that they condoned it, but I don't know. I don't know any other. I mean, I don't know much Gemaras about that. Let's go on. Let's go on to the Gemara. It's not really our topic. It's just trying to clarify what's going on. But anyway, what we're left with is that they would say these Sheva brachas also at the time of the Kiddushin. Sarah, you wanted to say something? If it's quick, you can say it. No. Okay, so go on.
Tanya Idach.
Exactly.
מברכים ברכת חתנים בבית חתנים וברכת אירוסין בבית האירוסין.
Oh, this is a lot easier. This is a lot more straightforward.
But now it means that we need separate brachot to know what they are.
Right.
What
Now
for.
we're saying Tanya, we have a different braita which says it's funny, the order is backwards. At the wedding ceremony, not the kiddushin, they said Sheva brachos. Ubirkat erusin. When did they say bir? And they had a special thing called birkat erusin bebeit erusin. When they did the kiddushin, they did another different bracha. So they had a bracha for each. Each had its own bracha. They didn't do this confusing thing where you say the Sheva brachas at both times. They had a different bracha. Okay. So now the Gemara asks. Go ahead.
ברכת האירוסין, מה היא מברך?
So what is this birkat erusin?
Yep. רבין בר רב עדה ורבא בר רב עדה תרוויהו משמי דרב יהודה אמרי ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצווה וציוונו על האריות ואסר לנו את הארוסות והתיר לנו את הנשואות על ידי חופה וקידושין.
Right. So that's the bracha. What we're about to say, what's missing from this bracha? What's missing? Anyone want to tell me what's missing from this bracha? There's a couple things missing.
We say lanu.
Lanu, right? It doesn't. It's missing a lanu. Hitir lanu etanisu. We say etanisuot lanu. Al yedei chubah. What else is missing? The Gemara is about to say the other part that's missing.
The last
The
one.
chatima.
The chatima. So let's read on.
רב אחא ברי דרבא מסיים בה משמי דרב יהודה ברוך אתה השם מקדש ישראל על ידי חופה וקידושין.
Right. So that's the bracha that we're familiar with. He says they would. So Mishmei de Rav Yehuda, as Rav Yehuda said to say this. Mekadesh Yisrael al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin.
Says
Go
the-
on.
the
Wait,
finish.
is there? Well, actually, let's before we go on. Oh, you still there? My computer did something funny. Because it's just my computer. Before you go on, look at the Rashi Asar Lanu et Arusot.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah. I'm picking on you today.
ואסר לנו את הארוסות מדרבנן, שגזרו על הייחוד של פנויה, שגזרו על הייחוד של פנויה, ואף ארוסה לא התירו עד שתיכנס לחופה. ובברכה כדפרישית כלה בלא ברכה אסורה לבעלה כנידה. והדרבנן נמי מברכין, והדרבנן נמי מברכין וציוונו ואסר לנו כדאשכחן בנר חנוכה.
Okay, so explain or translate or
So
whatever.
what he's saying is when it says אסר לנו את הארוסות, he's specifying that it's a derabanan isur, and because there's a gzera to not be with an unmarried woman, and also even to one that you are betrothed to. There's such a gzera, and it's the same reference to the same justification that we saw about from kala belo bracha asura leba'ala kenida. And then he has to justify why we can have this, and then he says, but it says Baruch atah Hashem asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu, so on, and he says we also find that in Ner Chanukah that a derabanan gets a bracha like
Right.
that.
So it's two things. The second part first is that even though it's a rabbinic law, you can still say shitzivanu because it's the rabbis, because you have lo tasur min hadavar asher yarucha. The rabbis told us to do this, so that's a Torah idea, and also that there's this that the rabbis called this penuya after erusin and until kiddushin she's usher, or sorry, just like a penuya is usher. Now does anybody see in this Rashi an implication that Rashi holds that a chuppah is only the Rabbanan? Now there are Rishonim who wanted to say that.
Certainly the idea that sex is forbidden before without a chuppah.
Right. That is the chuppah. It's almost as though you could almost read the Rashi as saying the chuppah was invented in order to be the symbol that the gezerah d'Rabbanan of forbidding relations is finished. Until the chuppah sort of changes her status rabbinically, and we're going to see that that's been rejected. Nobody actually agrees with that Rashi if Rashi really meant that. I think it's a bit of a read into Rashi. I don't think Rashi's really trying to say that chuppah is Rabbanan. He's just saying that this period between Erusin and chuppah has a special gezerah against having relations at that time. But the chuppah has other things that it does. The chuppah causes a marriage to occur, and that's a Torah idea. So that has to be spelled out, because you could say, no, the whole idea of chuppah is just to end this period, this rabbinic period. Well, if it's to end that rabbinic period, then the chuppah itself must also be rabbinic. But that's, I think, an incorrect reading of Rashi. And then, I mean, everybody says that's wrong, but they do propose it. Okay, so that's the Rashi. Let's just go back to the Gemara. So we have that the arusa is forbidden in this interim period. Where were we in the Gemara?
Mandalo.
Yeah, mandalo.
Mandalo chatimidi dahava aval birkat perot ve'birkat mitzvot uman dachatimidi dahava akidusha. So the one who doesn't do this extra this chatima of Mekadesh Yisrael al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin, that's treating this
equates it to.
bracha, what?
Yeah, go ahead. Good.
Treating this bracha as like one that you would make on some fruit or on a mitzvah, and the one who
Because
does
it's an
add the
open bracha.
fatwa-
On a fruit or a mitzvah, you say, Asher kiddishanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'tatef batzitzit. And that's it. You don't have a chatima. And the one who says, you do have a chatima, what is kiddusha?
It's like a bracha on like the kiddusha or something like
I think it might mean like
kiddusha yom.
like
Mhm.
kiddush of Friday night. I think you might mean
Right.
like Friday night kiddush. Because we start with the bracha and then we end with the bracha.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually we see kind of maybe that's the interesting question. It's a whole big question. When do you have a chatima? Is it any long, in general, we say basically any long bracha needs a chatima. and kiddush is long bracha. And this is also kind of a long bracha. So
It's a literary construct. They have two,
right.
as you said, it's a long bracha. It's like it kind of dangles there. And it dangles there. You got to finish it up. Look,
Mhm.
Asher Yatzar is also a long bracha. We don't say it's a bracha that's akadisha. In other words, it's not right. It's a long bracha. This is also, and Kiddush is a long bracha. So you got to finish it up.
In other words, I don't think that the Gemara is saying that there's a machlokas here, whether to equate it conceptually to these two categories, to this or to that. I think they're just deciding, is it a long bracha or a short bracha? So it's like in the middle.
Right.
If it's a long bracha, then it's like Kedusha. And if it's a short bracha, then it's like Birkas HaMitzvah and Birkas HaPeros. Because Birkas HaMitzvah and Peros are totally different categories. The only thing that's in common between them is that they're short. So really, it's just the Gemara's way of saying, is it a short bracha or a long bracha? We're not sure how long it is. There's one more Rashi I didn't mention. Vehitir lanu et hanesuot et neshotenu hanesuot lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. It's funny because this Rashi on the Gemara where it says vehitir lanu et hanesuot, we say et hanesuot lanu, and the Gemara just says et hanesuot. And Rashi sort of hitir lanu et neshotenu hanesuot lanu. If you read the Rashi as not a perush, but as like an addition, then it sort of fits to the way we say it. Or you could almost read I would almost suggest to read the Rashi as like his telling you how the way in Provence they actually said the bracha. Okay. So what do we get from this? We got from this that there's this bracha. Yofi. And that's the bracha we're going to say. But there are still going to be some questions about the exact nusach and about the status of this bracha, whether it's a bracha for a mitzvah or not. So let's see. Actually, I want to skip now to the Rambam. It's actually in my source sheet, but it's the Rambam in chapter 3. It's my source 5 in my source sheet, but it's also the Rambam chapter 3, halacha kaf gimel. So if you want to bring that, either I don't know if you guys do you guys have my share? Are you able to see the share? No, I think you actually have to request to view it, but I sent out something in the beginning of the week. Anyway, tell me if you have. Give me a thumbs up if you have the Rambam, Hilchas Ishus, chapter 3, halacha kaf gimel. Avni, you got it. Josh, you got it? Yeah. Sarah? You get, is that a finger? Gary, you have it?
I'll get it in 1 second. I'm just
Okay.
my computer being slow.
Wait, sorry, did you say, I'm looking at your sheet, which?
Yeah, at the end of 1, at the end of 5, at the very end of 5, there's a kaf gimel.
Maybe I'm looking at an old version of it. Oh, I see it now.
I can share my screen actually. Is it helpful to you guys if I share my screen? Maybe I'll share my screen.
Sorry. Nachum is Perek Gimel of what?
Of the Rambam Hilchos Ishus.
Ishus. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I always am editing these things. My source sheet here. Here, this is what I want to do. Here, Gary, you want to read it? Are you available?
Yeah, I'm just going to look at it. It's just easier to read it in a book, so I'm just getting the book.
Yeah, take a book.
Wait, is it 24? Okay, here we are. Okay. כל מקדש אישה בין על ידי עצמו בין על ידי שליח צריך לברך קודם הקידושין או הוא או שלוחו כדרך שמברכים על המצוות ואחר כך מקדש ואם קידש ולא ברך ולא יברך אחר הקידושין שזה ברכה לבטלה מה שנעשה כבר נעשה. So he's saying anyone who makes the blessing, whether it's by the Mekadesh himself or by a Shaliach, needs to do it before the Kiddushin, or either him or the Shaliach, in the same way that we've mentioned this with the actual Nusach of the Baracha, the Shekhet Shalom Mitzvotav, V'chakach Mekadesh, and then he performs the actual rite of Kiddushin. The Im Kiddush v'lo birach, but if he attempts to do Kiddushin without the beracha, lo yavarech achar kiddushin, and he doesn't do it after he's performed the kiddushin, shezo beracha levatula, because that would be a beracha levatula, because the action's already been done. Ma shenaseh kavan naseh, then it's done. So he seems to suggest that it's chal.
Yeah. No, well, wait, I want to read a little bit, a different emphasis, because what does he mean by shemavarchin al kol mitzvot? What does he mean by that? Kederech shemavarchin al kol mitzvot.
Well, I would guess that, well, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I don't know why he's used that particular language, but I can only surmise, having not
I think
looked
he's
up
referring to a famous term, over la'asiyatan.
Okay.
He's saying, just like you say, when you say it on all, and he's also categorizing this bracha as a bracha on a mitzvah, which is very important. In other words, it's a mitzvah that you're doing. And if you say the bracha before, you're supposed to, actually, I went recently into this topic of over la'asiyatan. It's a very confusing concept because what we're actually trying to do in over la'asiyatan, I'll give you some examples. For example, we hold the lulav we hold the etrog upside down. We say the bracha and then we turn it right side up. Why don't we just put it on the table, say the bracha, and then pick it up? Why do we have it upside down and then turn it over? Or Shabbos candles. You're supposed to really have the match lit in your hand when you say the bracha or candle, and then when you go to light, you already have it lit. Or Hanukkah.
That's the most difficult one for me. I can understand the igud of the lulav and somehow not doing it before you've said the bracha, but the hadlakat nerot after you've saying the bracha after you've lit is always been strange.
No. I mean, yeah, but that we don't know. So the Sfaradim do say it before. But all right, that was just an example. Let's say Hanukkah lights, but where everybody says the bracha before. Or another example is the talis. You have to unfold your talis before you say the bracha. You have to have it ready. So there's an idea of over l'siyatan doesn't just mean, we might think it just means before you do it, but it also means as close before as possible. Not just before, but in close proximity too. So therefore you have to have that etrog in your hand, and just turn it, do the minimal possible thing. We have to be right before. That's what over l'siyatan. That's sort of a parenthetical thing I wanted to say.
Where does that language come up? And what is
Over
the,
l'siatan.
yeah, and what is it? What
um,
does the phrase mean?
Over, like as you are about to do the asiyah. Over, like you're passing through it. As you're, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we cut the challah a little bit before we say hamotzi, so that you really just about, you have nothing left to do. You're about to cut it. You're very close. So the Rambam is considering like any mitzvah. So first of all, that puts it in the category of a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? There's a mitzvah, the Kadesh Isha. There's a mitzvah, the Kadesh Isha, and to say a bracha on it. And we have to do over l'siatan, which means and that's what he says at the end here. In Kidesh v'lo birech, lo yivarech achar kiddushin. If you did it without the bracha, it's too late, buddy. Lo yivarech achar kiddushin. Shizo bracha levatala. That's what we bracha levatala now, because it's too late. You had to do it before. Just like if you picked up a lulav and etrog without saying the bracha, and you shook and you held it even for a second, so now you can't say the bracha anymore. Why? What you did is done. You can't say a bracha over l'siyatan anymore. You can't say it ahead of time. So on that, let's see. So the Rambam clearly puts it in the category of a mitzvah, and it's a bracha before the mitzvah. Now look at the Ravid. This I added, so it's not in the sources that I sent out. But here it is. Do you have it there, Gary? Gershon?
Yeah, I've got it on your sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, so here, so read this Ravid.
רב"ד, כל המקדש אישה וכו יצא. כתב הרב"ד, אין אנו נוהגים כן אלא מקדש, ואחר כך מברך. והטעם, מפני שהדבר תלוי בדת אחרים, שאם תמאן האישה ולא תרצה, הרי בברכה לבטלה. וזה הטעם לברכת האב שמברך להכניסו בריתו של אברהם אבינו, עד כאן לשונו. So here he's saying, we don't do this, אלא מקדש, ואחר כך מברך. So he's got it the other way around.
Exactly. Can't get a bigger machloket than that.
That's, yeah, but
he's saying first do the bracha, do the act, and it's kind of like what you were saying about you don't like how Ashkenazi women light and then say the bracha. Here,
it's not I don't like it, Chas v'shalom, it's just that I've never understood it.
Yeah, okay. We can.
And the reason
here's the same idea. Do it in the backwards order. First, do the mitzvah, and then say the bracha. Why?
So it seems that it all depends on the opinion of others. That if they, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure the language.
So dat acherim,
if they refuse the women, also if they refuse the women, and then
now dat acherim just means the mind of another person. This is a mitzvah which is dependent on the mind of another person. Who is the other person? The woman. The woman is this other person. She may take the ring from your hand and throw it to the ground and say, forget it, I'm not marrying you. And you just said a bracha. And now the bracha is levatala. Shema lo tirtze haisha. Hayisha lo tirtze. She doesn't want to marry you. Harei bracha levatala. It's like this old joke of the guy who, I really don't like this joke. It doesn't make any sense. But the joke is like,
don't tell it.
Don't tell it? Okay.
But I'll point
I gotta tell it. The goy is coming to kill the Jew. And the Jew says, wait a minute, let me say a bracha for Kiddush Hashem. And he says the bracha, and now the guy says, you know what, I'm not going to kill you. He says, what do you mean? It's a bracha l'tala, you got to go ahead with it.
But you know, that's why the Rashba says there's no bracha on giving staka or no bracha on bikur cholim, because the person giving staka say he owes me the money, or in the other case, you're visiting me, tortures me.
Yeah, he's being polite.
I don't want
he really doesn't want you there.
Yeah.
But doesn't the Sugya and Kiddushin override this, and the fact that a woman doesn't get married ele medata? Like if she wouldn't turn
exactly.
up.
No, exactly. She can't get married. If she doesn't want to take the ring, she won't take it. And then
So her presence there is indicative.
no, you can't say that. No, she can. We learned this when we talked about we talked about when we learned about like what if she takes the ring and she gives it to her father or something. So we said over there, yeah, but if she would throw it down to the ground, for sure, that's a rejection. A woman can take the ring and you hand it to her and she throws it to the ground and doesn't want to marry you. She can change her mind up until that moment. So then the Ravid says you have to say the bracha afterward. Make sure she took the ring, everything is good, then say the bracha. So the Ravid agrees that it's a mitzvah. He doesn't say it's not a mitzvah. He just says for a different reason, we're going to have to say it in the opposite order and not do over l'siatan. Just so you, right? So for a different reason, because maybe she won't agree, but it's still a birka of a mitzvah. Now we have to look at the most interesting source of my sheet, in my opinion, which is the Ran. So here's the Ran. This is source number 2. Here, Sarah, you want to read?
Sure. Actually,
you can skip. You can actually skip this first. This is just Rashi.
That's just Rashi, right? Okay.
That's just Rashi.
V'hitir lanu et nishotenu hanisuot lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. V'im tomar heichan matzinu bracha kagon zo shemevarchin al ha'isur.
By the way, wait a second. I want to stop you for a second. Hanisuot lanu. Look, he. Where does he get this lanu from? It's not in the Gemara.
Is that quoting Rashi?
Yeah, I think he understands. Now I just have that idea now that he understands the Rashi the way I did. That the Rashi is correcting the Girsa almost. The Rashi is telling you how he's not correcting the Girsa, but telling you how the bracha really is said. And Nisuot Lanu, at Nashotenu and Nisuot Lanu, that's B'diuk Rashi. And yeah, so he's understanding Rashi as fixing up the as modernizing the Gemara. Okay. V'im tomar, sorry, go ahead.
I love this question so much. Okay. V'im tomar, heichan matzinu bracha kikon zo shemevarchin al ha'yisur. So where have we ever seen a bracha? You make a bracha on an isur. That's very strange. V'alo ein mevarchim she'asar lanu ever minachai. V'hitzir lanu et hashchut. Right? Like,
Et hashchut.
It's a shachut. Like at the right. You don't say that. Oh look, there's an isur on eating ever minachai, and now that I've shechted, now I get to have my hamburger. That's like a strange bracha.
Right.
Ve'odma inyan lahazkir bevracha zo arayot ve'od lama ein mevarchin b'matbei ktsar asher kitshanu al hakiddushin kashem shemevarchin al kol hamitzvot.
Wait, so he has 3 questions. He says, what's the second one is lazkir's. Why are we talking about arayot? If it's just a bracha for kiddushin. So say kiddushin. Why do we have to mention arayot? What's that arayot with anything? We're talking about the marriage. So just say we gave us a mitzvah to get married.
Here it is.
And then he says, and why don't we have a short bracha like we normally would have, like litatef b'tzitzit, 3 words or 2 words.
Like the other mitzvah, which shows that if this is a reasonable question, he thinks that it ought to be.
He's going to reject this.
Or at least it's plausible that it is, right?
Yeah, well, that's the Rambam. He says if the Rambam is right and the Ravid is right that it's a mitzvah, then let it be like all other mitzvahs. That's what he's saying. He's saying if the Rambam is, that's why I wanted to put that Rambam first. I want to point out that that's the simple understanding that it's a brachas of a mitzvah, and you do it before, or the Ravid says you do it after, but not because it's not a bracha of the mitzvah, because of some other reason. So he brings kashas on that theory, because then it should be a short bracha. Okay, go ahead.
V'yesh lomar devadei ein bracha zo birkat hamitzvah mamash she'i afshar levarech kefi ma she'ra'ui b'birkot hamitzvah.
Wait, stop. So he says quite clearly, it's not a bracha of a mitzvah. It's not a bracha of a mitzvah, and that's not like the Rambam.
Right, it's not a bracha on a mitzvah, but the reason why is a practical reason, which is it's not possible to say it the appropriate time.
Right. Because now he's giving another, he's actually, if you really think about it, it's just another kasha. Or he's saying, he's giving another reason why, or not another kasha, but another reason why it can't be a bracha mitzvah. Because in addition to the three they just cited, that it doesn't seem to be a bracha mitzvah, it also couldn't be a bracha mitzvah because, what does he say? Mashra'ui bebirkat mitzvah, she'ein levarech b'shas kiddushin, asher kiddushan v'tzivanu al kiddushin mishum, ve'ein mevarchin al mitzvah she'ein asiyata gamar malachta. What does he mean by that?
You have to like actually complete the mitzvah.
Right, and read the next words.
The
Ki ha.
ki ha da'achate michasra misira lechupa, but you haven't like completed it because you haven't done chuppah yet.
The chuppah. If you're talking about kiddushin, like the Rambam said in the beginning when he told us that they used to just take a woman in the shuk and bring her into her house and that's it. Now we have to do kiddushin and chuppah. In other words, it's a whole thing together. And he didn't finish it yet. He just did kiddushin. He didn't do chuppah. So there's no gemar of the mitzvah.
ובשעת כניסה לחופה, נמי אי אפשר לא לברך על קידושין וחופה, כיוון שכבר קידש מזמן מרובה, right? And you can't say, oh, well, I'll just say the bracha when I do chuppah, because if you do that, then the kiddushin was a long time ago.
Right. So in other words, you miss. Then you either way, you got to say a bracha before a mitzvah when you do the whole mitzvah. And here we do the two parts a year apart from each other, so there's no proper time to ever say this bracha.
וכשבא לקדש ולכנוס כאחת, גם כן לא ראו לתקן לו ברכה בפני עצמה, כדי שיהיה תופס ברכה שווה לכל.
Yeah, what's
I
his
wasn't
point?
clear on what he means by שווה לכל here.
He means, if you say, well, wait a second, a lot of times people do the two things right at the same time, so then you could say the bracha. My kashas go away. If you do it like we do it nowadays.
Right.
And he said, but then you would
Not
have
everybody does that.
Then you would have a different behavior for different people. We need a tofes bracha shaveh, a format, a fixed format for the bracha. And it can't be that sometimes you're going to say the bracha and sometimes you won't because it was separated. That'll confuse people. So even if we do it this way, we still can't make a bracha like that. Even if we do it all together, you still can't.
וכיוון דברכת מצווה ממש לא הווה אף על פי כן לא רצו להוציא מצווה זו ולא ברכה.
כיוון דברכת מצווה ממש לא הווה, since it's not really a bracha for a mitzvah,
right?
I'll call panim.
Right. We still didn't want it, right? We still didn't want to have it not have a bracha at all. That would be strange.
Right.
ותקנו לברך al kiddushan shel Yisrael. So then it's like a bracha on the kiddusha of Yisrael.
Of Am Yisrael.
Broadly.
This is like this is like giving a little vort to say under the chuppah here.
It's very cute. והיינו שהקדוש ברוך הוא בחר בנו וקידשן בעניין זיווג באסור להם ומותר להם. והיינו שציוונו על העריות. So now he's also solved the kasha about like why are we talking about arayot at all?
Yeah, and what category? It's not a birkat mitzvah, so it's a birkat what? Shevach? What category is this bracha then?
Yeah, I guess it is shevach in a certain way.
It's shevach. Yeah, I would say shevach. If I had to say a category, I think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
Because we're praising God for giving the kedusha to Am Yisrael. That he forbid us, that he forbid us to marry certain people and to forbid us to marry other people. He gave us very strict rules about who we can and cannot marry. And we know that everywhere you find, it says, Rashi says that kol makom she, motzei kiddush, you find kiddush, you find holiness, is precious. Is when you have separation. In other words, by limiting I didn't get the quote exactly right, but by having precious, by saying only these are permitted and these are not permitted, that causes kedusha. Everything is open, everything is free, then that's not called kedusha. Kedusha is when there's a limiting.
Yeah, so that's a good, as you kept on saying, homiletical, but it's a good homiletical or a good dodge from the fact that nothing's going on here.
What do you mean nothing's going on?
There's no Kiddushin. There's no
Right.
Kiddushin because
What do
we're
you mean
going.
there's no kedushin? There is kedushin. There's no complete marriage.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, well, right. It's a super Kiddushin, but the act is not complete, right? The act is not complete, so that's even a higher level. It's like even a higher level.
Right. The act is not complete, so we're blessing on a
We're going to go to a
general
higher level.
on a general truism that the Jewish people are a holy people, which we could theoretically say anytime. And they wanted to make a bracha for this event. It's almost like how very adventurous Jews today sometimes just make a bracha for a new event. You can almost see a source to that very modernistic liberal idea of just say any bracha, make up a bracha. It's almost like Chazal here just they said, well, Am Yisrael is kadosh, and it has to do with they're kadosh because of the forbidden relations that exist to them. So we're going to say that bracha here at this event. So there should be a bracha for this event.
So that again, they're having so you do a mitzvah here.
But it's not a bracha
Shabbat,
on a mitzvah. It's a bracha
right?
of praising God. It's like Shechianu. It's like
Yeah.
we're praising
Yeah.
God for this event.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to think that rather than thinking that he's like imagining this as a new bracha that's like kind of constituted out of nowhere, that he's actually reading the sugya of man dechati midei to have a kiddusha to mean like on the kiddusha of Israel or this relationship or whatever you want to describe.
Well, that's
it
what I
as.
was thinking. Because remember,
Like
the
in
other
other words,
opinion-
he has like what to lean on in the sugya. He doesn't do that. But I'm just.
I don't think
Yeah,
he's basing on the sugya. I think he's basing on all of his arguments that he gave, on his close reading of the words of the bracha, and he's figuring out what Chazal did. What this bracha must be, because of of how it's said, when it's said, and what the actual words are. I think that's enough. But I think there is a sort of a remez there in the Gemara where it does say Birchas Mitzvah. He compared it to Birchas Mitzvah or Birchas Kiddusha and Kiddishta, whatever, Kiddishta. So I do think there's a kind of a remez to it, but I don't think that's the basis. I think it's just based on an analysis, a tight analysis of what's going on here. And I would argue against the modernistic approach to say, but that's what the rabbis of the Gemara did, and that's not for the past, 1,500 years. That's not what Jews do in general.
I mean, the rabbis of the Gemara did it.
The rabbis of the Gemara have that authority. We don't necessarily. Yeah, what do you want to say, Yavni?
Yeah, and you don't need like this particular argument of the Ran. The rabbis of the Gemara like came up with lots of brachot on lots of things to be right.
No, but here you see a bracha that it was almost unnecessary. You see, brachas of tzitzit, so it's a mitzvah. You have to say bracha before a mitzvah. You have a rule
I'm thinking about it like
here. Why did they make this bracha? They didn't necessarily. If they wouldn't have made this bracha, the world would have been like they didn't necessarily.
But the same for the bracha and seeing a rainbow.
No, but we have you're right. I hear what you're saying, but there's a category.
Or the desert, or the ocean.
It's one thing when the rabbis create categories, and then you're saying this is the category of Sheva, but I mean, yeah, okay, maybe it's in the category of Sheva.
No, but I could see this being used as like
it is like a rainbow.
Particular
This
precedent
is
of
like
doing it for an event that you're
This bracha is in the same category as a bracha for a rainbow, right? Where it's an event that happens, and we're saying a praise to Hashem about this event. Okay, so let's go on.
And you're not supposed to look at a rainbow.
You're not supposed to look at the rainbow.
Stare at the rainbow. Same thing here.
And here you're not supposed to look at the kala
Right.
under the chuppah.
And with this, we've gone as far as the drasha can go.
Okay, yeah, let's get back to this exciting ride.
Let's go back to like real Torah.
Sorry, I sometimes get excited. Okay, Asar Lana et Harusot. Where were we? Sorry.
והיינו שציוונו על האריות, I think we're at וחידש לא, right? לא יטעה השומע, is that where we are? וחידש לא יטעה השומע, לומר שבקידושין אלו בלבד הותרו המותרות, הוטרחו לומר ואסר לנו את הארוסות בלאו דלא תאסור, ולהזכיר היתרים דהיינו על ידי חופה וקידושין.
All right, so explain that.
So if we didn't have the kind of broad language of like or if we didn't include the negative and the positive, right, that like this is prohibited and then made mutar, then you would think that like only through this kiddushin is it the case that
No, it means when he means only, what he means to say is bilvad. He means the listener might think that this kiddushin that's taking place now, a year before the chuppah,
right, is like sufficient.
Is sufficient to cause a heter and let the couple be together. So we have to remind. It's almost, and I always
we have to give like good, like it's like good eitzah. Like we have to remind them that like this is not the whole thing.
Right, as we're doing this whole ceremony, and we got all these people there, and we're saying, but we're reminding the chatan and kala, asar lanu et arusot lanu, you're still forbidden. We're giving them that warning, so nobody should yita hashomea. None of the listeners should make a mistake and think that now they're permitted, and that's why we say asar lanu. It's like the thing that we say on Hanukkah. You know, we have to remind the people that this is of what the halacha is.
Right. It has a sort of like Shabbos morning kiddush, at least the long version feel. Like just reminding you, this is what we're doing.
Don't go for a drive.
Right. Don't go for a drive. Don't like, I don't know, ride a horse or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
And then what does he say? And then he throws in belav de lo tasur. That's where he throws in that it's also okay to say tzivanu because we have the lav of lo tasur, and so it's allowed to say that the Torah forbid it. No, the Torah commanded us because the rabbis commanded us. Ulahazkir heteran al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin, which is al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. It could have just said al yedei chuppah. Why did it say chuppah v'kiddushin? We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So continue.
Okay. וכתב הרמב"ן ז"ל, ונראה מזה שאין חותמים במקדש ישראל על ידי חופה וקידושין, אף על פי שכתוב מקצת נוסחות לפי שאינו ראוי לברך על החופה שאינה נעשית עכשיו. So
what does the Ramban say?
He says that it's not good to say to end the bracha al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin because you're not doing the chuppah now. That's
How should it be?
Al yedei kiddushin, because that's what you're doing.
No. It should just be. Try again.
Al yedei chuppah. Well.
No al yedei. Because just like the Rambam's girsa, it should just be. Maybe the whole. Wait a second.
Right. Well, should I just read the rest of it?
Yeah, read the rest of it. I think he might just mean not to have he might mean not to have a chatima at all, or he might mean to just say Mekadesh Yisrael. Let's see what.
Right. ועוד שמקדש ישראל הוא מעין הפתיחה שקידשם בכל עסקי נישואין. לפיכך אין לחתום אלא מקדש ישראל בלבד.
Exactly. So it's like the Rambam. I didn't notice it. Let's look at the Rambam again. Maybe I didn't point that out. Here's that Rambam. Wait. Oh no, we didn't see the Rambam yet. We'll see the Rambam. Sorry. So we didn't see the reason why I didn't point it out is because we didn't see it. But I brought the Rambam says also without Al Yidei Chuppah Yisrael. He just says.
Mekadesh Yisrael.
Actually, you know what I do here? I have it right here.
No, it's not in the Chatima. He just says Mekadesh Yisrael, but mentions Chuppah.
Exactly. So here. Halacha Yudalid, Ketzad Mivarech, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu, he has a lot of changes. Hivdilanu min ha'arayot, he separates us from the arayot. Va'asar lanu et ha'arusot, v'hitir lanu et ha'nisuot, al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin, Baruch Atah Hashem, mekadesh Yisrael. Zeh. V'zohi bracha eresin. V'nagu ha'am lahasdir bracha ala kos. V'im sham yayin, you don't need a kos. Okay, so he just says mekadesh Yisrael, like the Ramban also says. Let's go back to the Ran there. It's interesting, to know all the different nuschaot that are possible here. Okay, so that's the Ramban. V'katav Rabbeinu Haigon.
V'katav Rabbeinu Haigon.
This is still within the Ramban, I think. I think the Ramban is quoting.
Yeah, it could be a quote from the Ramban, all of this, yeah.
Yeah. Gemara hi behedyad mikadesh Yisrael v'kach chotmin b'shtei yeshivot miyimot hachachamim harishonim ve'ad achshav.
What does it mean b'shtei yeshivot?
Surah and Pumbedita?
Surah and Pumbedita, I assume.
I guess so.
Right. That's what they would say.
But it doesn't say shtei hayeshivot.
But yeah, shtei yeshivot. Maybe he means.
By that time there was like a Baghdadi yeshiva.
Or maybe he means. Or maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
V'tosefet zeh.
ותוספת זה שאתם מוסיפים גיורתהו היא שאין קידושת ישראל תלוי בכך. This thing that you're adding is a bad thing to say because the kedusha of Yisrael is not dependent on this.
Yeah, the way that we're made kadosh in millions of ways. God chose us, b'charbanu mikolam. We're not made kadosh just because He forbid the arayot ayidei chuppah kiddushin. That's a big chiddush, you're saying. That's how we're made kadosh, just by that? Okay. Go ahead.
That's what I go and say.
It kind of sounds like an anti-Catholic statement. Not saying that it's what it, like against, it's not a sacrament.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of right. Like it's not a.
It doesn't
what?
change the world. Yeah.
What,
you know.
I didn't follow, but okay.
Well, it's not like what he's saying is, I guess, is that Kiddushin does not create the Kedusha of Yisrael.
Right.
And a sacrament, if I remember my Augustine, but a sacrament is like when you have a sacrament, it creates Kedusha. Which is every Bratslav Dvar Torah I've heard says is actually a Catholic sacrament. Never mind. But anyway, something like that.
Yeah, no, but I think that's right. I don't.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know
the Kedusha is something over and above and beyond this event, even though this event is a great and holy event, but the Kedusha is there irrespective. Why would we say that the Kedusha is because Al Yedei Mekadesh, the Jewish people, by means of weddings?
Great. It just seems like you could have the same kasha about, like, I don't know, Friday night Kiddush. Like, Jewish people's chosenness is not just because of Shabbat.
No, but there we
There's
say,
lots of
Baruch
things.
Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat.
Yeah, no, I guess it's not the Chatima, but I guess the other, like,
No,
chosenness.
that's the point. I think that's the point. The middle,
Yeah.
the Hatima is supposed to be like the final summary of what we were trying to say. And if that summary has in it some extraneous information, then that's problematic. If the middle part has extraneous information, fine, so we can wax poetic in the middle. But at the end, we have to sort of say what we actually were trying to do here. And here we're just saying, Mikadesh Yisrael. That's a bracha we can always say, because God is Mikadesh Yisrael in lots of ways. And so we can throw many of things in the middle, and at the end say this is another one of the Mekadesh. But to say the final thing is how does he Mekadesh Israel like the chuppah? Whoever knew that?
Yeah.
So that's Rabbeinu Chai. Okay. Where are we? So we are
Hilchot Rabbeinu, I think.
yeah,
Hilchot
Hilchot Rabbeinu.
Rabbeinu Zal, Matzati Barachata Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael Al Yedei Chuppah V'Kiddushin, V'Chatav Yado Zal Nimchak Al Yedei Chuppah V'Kiddushin V'Ikar Ad Kan Lashon Haramban Zal. So he found that there is a handwritten manuscript where like that Al Yedei the Chuppah and Kiddushin is like struck out.
Right. It's funny.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like this. There's another joke in the Yeki. It was like in Switzerland. They had a very Yeki Beit Knesset, and the Gabbai was very strict that everybody should say the Nusach of Ashkenaz and not say Sfard, the Hasidim. And they would. So the guy, a guy came up to Daven and he said. In Kaddish, he said, "V'yatzmach porkaneh v'karev meshicheh." That the v'yatzmach porkaneh v'karev meshicheh, and the Mashiach should come. And the Gabbai said, "Not in this Beit Knesset."
That's good.
So that's kind of like here. He wrote it and then he crossed it out. Not Al Yedei Chuppah V'Kiddushin.
All right.
Question: when he says Hilchot Rabbeinu Zal, is that saying like another work by Rabbeinu Hai Gaon?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's the right. It's the Ramban. Hilchot Rabbeinu. I thought at first I
commenting on, or is it in a context where the Ramban is commenting on?
Is this all the Ramban? I didn't look up the Ramban.
It's all the Ramban.
It's all the Ramban. So who is?
I mean, at least that's what he marks, right? Ad Kan Lashon HaRamban Zal, right at the end of the line.
Yeah.
So this is Ad Kan Lashon HaRamban. So this is who's the Rabbeinu that the Ramban? Sometimes the Ramban is referring to the Rambam, but I don't know.
That could make sense.
I don't know where he wrote this. I don't know where this Ramban is written. But
when
anyway,
you see how I don't think it is. We see. I have to check it. When you see halachas, it's off as halachas gedolos that you have to bahag. You have to check. I don't think so. Okay.
Anyway, I don't know who Rabbeinu is, but anyway, go on.
Okay, v'pirish v'hitir lanu et hanisuot v'hitir lanu otan shehen nisuot lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin v'Rabbeinu Tam Zal hige v'hitir lanu et hanisuot lanu. So Rabbeinu Tam is the one who puts in nisuot lanu, which I guess makes sense that like that is the kind of Provence way of talking, right? Because Rashi has something.
Rashi also had it. You're saying right. What I was pointing out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what did he add? Hitir lanu otan. Otan. Right. We had nashotenu. Right. Fine. Either way, but we don't actually have that full girsa. We nowadays we just say hitir lanu etan nisuot lanu. But anyway, it's the same thing.
That's the Ramban's explanation of it, and it's Rabbeinu Tam that gives the different version, which is the shorter one that we say.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think what we say is Rabbeinu Tam.
Right. That's the shortened one. Rabbeinu Hai Zal Katav v'hitir lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. He just said, he just got rid of everything. Hitir lanu. You don't have to say eta nisuot lanu. You already said aser lanu eta nisu. What is it? In other words, you're just referring the hitir kilo otam, the hitir otam lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. Ve'ein minhag b'yeshiva lomar et nisuot.
Ve'ein minhag b'yeshiva lomar et hanisuot ufirish al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin af al pi shehakiddushin kodmin lachuppah. Hainu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin shekadma lahen. So there's something bizarre about saying chuppah v'kiddushin when in fact the things occur in the opposite order.
Right. They should say
Yeah.
they kid. Well, we didn't want to say so right. We wanted to really. This is a little bit confusing. Is it should have just said al yedei kiddushin b'chuppah. That's the order. But we wanted to emphasize that we're entering into a period of prohibition, which is only permitted by a chuppah. So we really wanted to say al yedei chuppah. So al yedei chuppah, and then in parentheses we say, but not any old chuppah, the kiddushin shekadmu lehen, but it only can be a chuppah that was preceded by a kiddushin. But we want to say, really, our main point is to say, hit lanu al yedei chuppah. So that's why we say chuppah first. Because if we would say hit lanu al yedei kiddushin the chuppah, it would sound like there's no two steps. It would sound like the kiddushin is also matir something. The kiddushin is not matir anything. Only the chuppah is matir something.
Yeah. Okay. וכתוב בספר העיטור שעיקר נוסחו על ידי חופה וקידושין בקידושין בבית. So the Itur says that it's big kiddushin with a bet. אלא מפני
שהדייקנים
קראו לבית, right? They got confused about.
No. The daikanim were correct. It was really
they were correct that it was a bet, but then it got written down as a vav. Because they were not precise about their
the daikanim karu lebet hahi rafa. They referred to it as in a soft, which means a vet. They read it not as a bet, but as a vet. Big ayidei chuppah, big kiddushin. But it was really they said it the kiddushin. Why? Mifnei shehi smucha lehei, because it's preceded by a hey. Because ayidei chuppah ends with a hey.
Big kiddushin.
Big kiddushin. So it was a rule. Lefisha otiot yud hey vav aleph, all those letters. A little grammar lesson here. Marpot, they soften. Anytime you have a yud hey vav or aleph, they soften the following beged kefet, bet gimel dalet kaf pei taf. So you have like kitetse sora. If you're Ashkenazi, you say kitetse sora. You don't say kitetse Torah because there's a tetse before it with an aleph, and an aleph softens the taf and it becomes kitetse sora. So this is a little grammar lesson here. And then ta'ua sofrim, and then when the sofrim heard these daikanim saying it correctly, right, with a vet,
they wrote it down wrong.
Then they wrote it down with a vav. So that's also a big chiddush. What do you mean when you say, al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin? For sure you should say v'kiddushin, but what are you thinking when you say v'kiddushin? You should think vet, says he, and not vav. All right, we'll take a break here, but it's very interesting. So just to summarize Ad Khan is that the Ramban, the Ramban and the Ran, let's say, hold that it's a bracha. This special bracha is not a bracha of a mitzvah like the Rambam and the Ravid hold, but it's rather actually it's really the Ran. The Ramban, I think, was just adding this other thing about why exactly the language, how it is, what its purpose is about forbidding things. But the Ran's main point was that it's a bracha of shevach to God that he made Am Yisrael kadosh, and they couldn't say a bracha of mitzvah here even though they wanted to, and so they gave this substitute bracha. All right, we'll come back in 5 minutes. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure if the Ritva adds anything. Let's stop here. Pause recording. All right, so let's take a look at this Ritva. Josh, are you there? Not. Maybe I will. Here, I'll take a chance at this Ritva here. Ritva Ketubot. So it says like this. This is Ketubot, Ritva Ketubot, Zav Zayin, Amud Bet. Or Josh, you want to read that? Or should I read it?
I can read. בברכת אירוסין, מה מברך? אשר קידישנו ואסר לנו את הארוסות. פירש רש"י, צד. דהה מדרבנן שגזרו על ייחוד פנויה, אף ארוסה לא התירו עד שתיכנס לחופה, ובברכה, כדאמרינן במסכת קלה, קלה לא ברכה אסורה לבעלה כנידה. מדרבנן למה מברכינן, וציוונו, וכו'. דאישכחן בנר חנוכה עד כאן, אכן ניכר. Repeating Rashi.
Yeah, you don't have to translate. You can just go on.
מיהו חופה מדאורייתא היא, לעשות נשואה לעניין הפרת נדרים, ולטמא לה, וליורשה, למען דאמר ירושת בעל דאורייתא. Okay, so there's all sorts of things where chuppah is a doraita deciding factor. וכן לדין מיתת אשת איש שזנתה בחנק. אשת איש שזנתה בחנק.
So he's saying, this is what I was telling you about, that you could try to read the Rashi as saying that chuppah is not deraita. And here he's saying, the Ritva is saying, but don't make that mistake. Chuppah is deraita for all of these reasons. In other words, it has this effect. Tameh,
but I think that's it. It has a deraita impact.
Exactly, it has a deraita impact. In addition to matering this rabbinic prohibition of being with the woman after the Erusin. Go ahead.
וכן לדין מיתת אשת איש שזנתה בחנק, יש הפרש מן התורה בין ארוסה לנשואה, אף על פי שלא נבעלה, וכדאיתא לקמן בפרק נערה. ואם כן, על כורכך חופה דאורייתא, לעשות בנשואה לכל הדברים כדאמרינן גבי בני נוח, ואולת בעל יש להם מן התורה.
Right. In other words, he's saying,
I didn't get that last one about
is it the right to concept?
Okay. נכנס לחופה ולא נבעלה, אין להם כמו שיש בישראל.
In other words, the non-Jews don't have a distinction between nichnas l'chuppah and had relations. The same
They only
thing.
have kiddushay bia.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Well, kiddushay or chuppah.
But they only have.
Yeah, chuppah bia.
מן התורה ארוסה מותרת וחכמים אסורה כנידה. עד שתיכנס לחופה בברכה. ואלה דברים ברורים, וכך כתב הרמב"ן. According to the Torah, arusa is permitted, but it's the Chachamim who gave the status, forbidden status of a nida until there's a chuppah with a bracha. ואלו דברים ברורים, and this is obvious. And this
is very interesting. Not so many people are aware of this, that the chuppah with the bracha is required. Right? It says, like we saw in Rashi brought it that's from Masechta Kala. It's not in the Talmud. From Masechta Kala, he tells us here, which is like these small Masechtot that are not part of the normal, Shas, but they're additional Masechtot, and
They're Guyana, probably.
Yeah, kala below bracha arusa lebala kinida, and that's just like chuppah. She needs both of those things, the brachot and the chuppah, to be permitted. Vutzrachti.
והוצרכתי לכתוב כן מפני שיש מן הנדויים מי שפירש על רש"י שהוא סבר לחופה לאו דאורייתא כלל. There's heretics out there who think that Rashi thinks that a chuppah isn't deoraita at all.
Yeah, this is an incorrect. I fixed this language. This is the girsa that I found online. When I looked in my own edition of the Ritva, it just says sheyesh misha perish. So I didn't go online and fix the wherever I found this, but that's not. I just corrected the version. You don't have to say that. You don't have to be a nidui if you just because you think that Rashi thinks that chuppah is the Rabbanah. Okay.
Maybe they only do it for another reason. Just
Yeah, you can be a nidui for other reasons, but not for that.
secondary mistake.
All right, go on.
כך הגרסה בכל הספרים, והתיר לנו את הנשואות על ידי חופה וקידושין. Okay, so all the versions he has access to is this nusach.
No, there's the nusachs of the Gemara, like we have. Hitir lanu et nesuot without the lanu. I always, whenever I'm at a wedding and I hear them say et nesuot lanu, it grates on my ear. It doesn't sound like proper Hebrew. Hitir et nesuot lanu. What do you mean nesuot lanu? How many wives do we have?
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, right. I've been at some of your weddings. Yeah.
Always
say that
it's a collective bracha. It's like Shechianu.
No, but it's also problematic because it also sounds like, what do you mean? Once we're married, then we're in this club where we can be with whichever wives we want as long as we're all married. In other words,
that's lanu.
No, but still, this is what lanu to the community. It should say, "Vehitir et ishtosh ish lo." You know what I mean? It's not that it's kol echad et nashav. Whatever, if he has more than one. Yeah, it's the language doesn't always bother me. Let's go on. Before I
think that's what Rabbeinu Tam is trying to correct. He thinks Veitir lanu et nesuot implies that
that's even worse,
then
right?
You can marry. You could just be with any married woman.
Exactly. It sounds like hitir lanu et nesuot. Once they're nesuot, then they're mutter. By the way, that's actually a friend of mine was doing a PhD on French sailors in the 1700s and their letters that they wrote. And it said that the difference, and those sailors wrote the difference between women and in France and in America. They would travel between France and America. It said in America, the women before they were married would fool around with the sailors. In France, they wouldn't. Only once they're married, then they would fool around with the sailors. Because then if they got pregnant, it's the husband, no problem. So that's so yeah, you could misread this Gemara as saying the Nesuot are permitted. So anyway, so back to our subject. Vehitir lanu et nesuot al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. That's the gear subject in all of the Gemaras. Go, keep going, Josh.
Okay. Just I checked it, and there are manuscripts that don't. Oh, sorry, but it's a different thing.
Oh, you did check it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but whatever. I'll take you
check for the
one that says
Chatima.
Mekadesh Yisrael at the end.
Oh, Mekadesh Yisrael.
Presumably that's the one that Rabbi Gaon was looking at. Yeah, I was wondering. Anyway.
But continue. But Tema.
Okay. So Rabbeinu Tam Goes והתיר את הנשואות לנו. Rabbeinu Hai.
No, but Tema here from here.
ותמה גדולה, למה תקנו לשון סתום כזה בברכה הנאמרת בסתם ברבים?
So look here, if you go to my footnote here, this footnote is from the corrected edition of the Ritva. Kavanat Rabbeinu litmoa al lashon nesuot shelo nitfresh lemi nesuot. Just like we were saying. So he says, and also the version I have doesn't say bestam, it has berabim. So the tema gedola lama tiknu lashon satum kazeh bibracha nemer berabim. Why does this sort of unclear language been written that in a bracha that's said in public, or that's said, I think, or in the plural, that's said in the plural?
I don't think it's a plural. I think it's being that it's said
in public. In public, okay, but okay, I don't. It's not really important why it's said in public. I mean, if it was said in private
because people
also.
will get confused if it. I don't know.
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
True, but why? But also, if you say it in private, so many people will say it, and they'll also get confused. I don't quite understand the difference, but okay, whatever.
Fair
So if you say it in private or public, you say it in public. So Rabbeinu Tam Gores.
רבי נתן גורס והתיר את הנשואות לנו.
So you see, I mean, what's his Ritva adding? I think what he's adding is just the rationale for the Rabbeinu Tam. That he's just clarifying that this language was satum, was too unclear, and it sounded like you permitted all married women. The Rabbeinu Hai,
רבינו חי אינו גורס הנשואות, אלא והתירום לנו על ידי חופה וקידושין. He doesn't have this language at all.
and that just sort of avoids the whole problem. V'hitirum.
Wait, why does that avoid the whole problem? Isn't it the same? Is that any better?
Oh. Well, he also has the lanu. V'hitirum
Right.
lanu.
It doesn't solve your problem. It solves the.
It's
No, maybe the problem is nisuot, and it's a
no, I don't like the
Birkat
nisuot lanu.
Eirusin.
This is no this girsa actually doesn't grate on my ear. This sounds to me better in Hebrew. The hitirum lanu. In other words, we're not saying that the hitirot nisuot lanu. We're mattering the women that are married to us. Here he's just saying hitirum lanu, and he permitted them to us. We're not talking about how they're married. We're talking about the heter is for us. The hitirum lanu. So it avoids the problem because hitirum just permitted those people. I like this girsa the best. The hitirum lanu. He permitted those ones that we said are forbidden. He permitted them al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. And the lanu doesn't mean that they're nisuot dafka to us. It means hitirum lanu. He permitted them to us.
וכן ראוי לומר, אלא שלא נהגו.
There you go. He agrees with me. This is the best way to say it, but nobody does it. So what are you going to do?
ואם תאמר, כיוון שחופה האחרונה היא גומרת, היה לנו לומר על ידי קידושין וחופה, ויש לומר, והכי כאמר, והתיר לנו נשואתנו על ידי חופה, וקידושין אשר קדמו להו. וסמכין על חופה לנישואין, כי היא עושה נישואין. Okay, so
Right.
it's a bit convoluted.
Yeah, a little bit convoluted. V'samchin al chuppah l'nisu'in, ki hi oseh nisu'in. That's a different explanation. Nisu'ot al yedei chuppah. V'hitir lanu nisu'ot al yedei chuppah.
Al yedei chuppah and the kiddushin which preceded it.
Right, and in other words, he reads it as different. It's not that he mattered them by means of a chuppah and kiddushin. It's that he mattered those that are married by means of chuppah. You see what I mean? The marriage is by means of chuppah. Et nisuotenu al yedei chuppah. Not that he matters those al yedei chuppah, but that he matters the ones that are married to us. How do they get married? By chuppah and kiddushin also. It's just a slight, different way of thinking about the words. Okay, continue. V'yesh omrim.
ויש אומרים דגרסינן על ידי חופה וקידושין, כי כן תקנו, ומפני שהיו אומרים וקידושין בבית רפויה, הנחלף לעולם בוו, באו ואמרו וקידושין. וכל זה דחוק, שלא לצורך.
Oh, here he actually rejects it. I think the Ramban didn't reject it, but here he actually rejects it. It is a vav, he's saying. So remember, the Ritva, I believe, is the Talmud of the Ramban. I think Rav Landis actually once said to me that, by the time these Torahs get down to the Ritva, they're much more sharpened and clear. So we're seeing pretty much the same thing that we saw in the Ramban, because this is the school of the Ramban. But he added to us detail, some details. He added us this thing that we don't actually say with the bet, we say with a vav. And he explained Rabbeinu Tam's opinion. Now let's look at this Aruch HaShulchan. So the Aruch HaShulchan, he basically brings this Ramban, this Ran, I mean. Here, Yavni, why don't you read?
אבל מפני שחז"ל לא רצו להוציא מצווה זו בלא ברכה כלל, לכן תקנו לברך על קדושת כלל ישראל, והיינו שהקדוש ברוך הוא בחר בהם וקידשן בעניין זיווג, ולתת לו שבח אשר קידשנו במצוותיו והבדילנו מן העמים, וציוונו לקדש אישה המותרת לנו ולא אחת מן האריות. והזכירו בו איסור ארוסות והיתר נשואות בחופה וקידושין, שלא יטעה אדם לומר שהברכה של קידושין נתקנה להתרה לו, לכך הזכירו חופה לומר דרק ברכת חופה היא המתרת הקלה, ולהכי נמי הקדימו חופה לקידושין לומר והתיר לנו את הנשואות על ידי חופה שאחר ברכת הנישואין. Oh, I have a question on this that I just read. It's like going on.
Yeah, go ahead.
The argument is that the argument about the arayot is that that's the special thing for us. But isn't there in Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach? Isn't there?
Yeah, they also have that, but they also do have that, but they don't have as many.
Okay.
They don't have as many, but you're right. Yeah, there's actually even ways that this is there's a famous, I don't know, famous, but I think it might be the Emek HaDavar who says on the brothers, when Yosef accused them of Arayot, how could Yosef accuse his brothers of Arayot? How are they? They're over on Arayot? I think it's the Emek HaDavar says, but I'm not sure. He says, and there's a whole long thing there's a whole long Torah I can explain, but I don't want to explain now. But the crucial point is that actually there are certain ways that a Jew could marry an arayot that a goy couldn't actually. For example, a convert.
Right.
Two converts, brother and sister, halachically could get married.
Right.
Three brothers and sisters, they're converts, but the goy have no concept of conversion for a goy. You can't convert to becoming a Catholic or a Protestant doesn't change you, or becoming a Muslim or a Protestant, you still have the same law. So there's no tinok. She's no ger ketinok shenolad dami. He's so there are certain cases of arayot that are actually permitted for a Jew that are not permitted for a goy. But in general, yeah, you're right. I also thought about the same question. Like, what does he mean? There's arayot for Gentiles too. But remember the Rambam. The Rambam said that you don't have kiddushin by the goyim. You take a woman into your house. You just have chuppah, and you ba'aleha, and that's it. There's the whole concept of kiddushin is a Jewish concept. So that also, and that there's a prohibited period between kiddushin and chuppah. That's also only Jewish. So there are some things. Also, yichud only applies is only for Jews. Okay, Adam. So it's a better question than I can answer, but it's a better question than any answer I can give. But yeah, there's some kind of idea that Jews have a stricter level of arayot. V'yeshomim she'ikar girsa hi chuppah b'kedushin klomar. What does that mean? Chuppah im kiddushin akod mimla. Oh, that's a perfect. It fits, right? And as chuppah big kiddushin. chuppah in the context of kiddushin. It's not al yidei chuppah v'kiddushin shekadmula. It actually fits to the whole idea that we're saying. It's chuppah in the context of kiddushin. Then you're permitted. Klomar chuppah im kiddushin akadumuim lo. Rak mipnei shabetu rafa al pi adikduk kedin beged kefet hasamuch la aleph hey vav yud. L'chach ta'u asofrim v'katvu v'kiddushin bevav. Va'od mipnei she'minhag etzleinu la'asot irusin v'nisuin ke'echad. Nowadays we do everything together. Umachnisin tachat hachuppah. V'achar kach mevarchim birchat erusin. L'kach shaper dami lahakdim gam tevat chuppah l'kiddushin. In other words, he's saying nowadays, since we're doing everything we're doing kiddushin under a chuppah. We're in a chuppah. So there's no, certainly it makes sense to say chuppah first. V'od mipnei she'gemar heter hu al yidei chuppah. The actual gemar heter is by the chuppah. L'kach ikdimu hachuppah. He's trying to explain this. He's not saying anything new. He's just bringing down what we saw. Just really, it's nice to see how he takes the Ramban.
He's adding the bringing the contemporary minhag of doing them together.
And he's also explaining, he's clearly trying to explain this. What does it mean, shekadmu lahem? I think he's trying to justifying this bet more than the Ritva did. Maybe he didn't see the Ritva. He may have just seen the Ramban. The Ramban. All right. What else do you want to see? We don't have much time, but there's a very interesting Pnei Yoshua that I think we can look at. Here, I put it on it's only on my newer source sheet. Here. So here, Sarah, you want to read this Pnei Yoshua?
Sure. B'Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Mevarchim Birkat Chatanim B'Veit Chatanim, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, At B'Beit HaYerusin, Mevarchin Otah B'Chulei. That's the Gemara in Ketubah that we just saw. V'Katvu Kol HaPoskim, Denuhagin Levarech, Birkat Erusin, Gam Kein Al HaKos, Ela She'enu Ma'akev. And everybody says that you should do it al hakos, but if you can't do that for some reason, that's not a problem.
You can say this bracha, unlike the Birkat Chatanim, which has to have a kos, the Birkat Irusin doesn't have to have a kos. That's an important point. Okay. V'ra'iti
lahaskir milta, dekashya letuva al masha nehagu, da'achar mevarech birkat hayayin al hakos. Da'acher mevarech birkat hayayin al hakos. V'chatan v'akala shotin mimenu. V'im ken he'ach mevarech brei pri agafen kivan de'in mevarech shoten mimenu. Okay, but then right, so in the practice of saying pri hagafen and then handing it to the chatan and kala, that doesn't seem to work because the person saying the bracha, not the person drinking.
You're saying a bracha when do you say brei pri hagafen and not drink it?
Right.
Well, we're going to see that there is a case. You all should be saying, when do you say brei pri hagafen? What?
Havdalah.
Well, Havdalah, you drink it eventually,
Eventually, yeah, but there's still.
No. But here the Messiah, remember it's acher, al yidei acher. The Masader Kiddushin is saying this. The rabbi is saying this, and then he doesn't drink it at all. He gives it to the chatan and the kala. When do you have such? Is there such a concept? There is such a concept like that. Well, we're about to see. He's gonna say.
Hakaimelan besof perik gimel de Rosh Hashanah. Kol habrachot im yatsa motzi chutz mebirkat hane'emin. Right. So he's just sort of citing the general principle.
Wait, what is this principle? Im yatsa motzi. What does that mean?
If you are, I'm trying to figure a good way to translate it elegantly. If you can be if like you by saying the bracha would have fulfilled your obligation, then you can also fulfill it for other people. Is that like a good way of doing it? I don't know.
I try a different way. Try a totally different way. Just translate it in the most simple Hebrew.
Right. Like if you can.
No can. Get rid of the word can.
Right. If you have fulfilled your obligation, then you've fulfilled it for other people.
Then you are able to fulfill it for other people. In other words, im kol brachot im yatsa, even though it's really not even, it shouldn't really be im, it should be afal pi sheyatsa motzi.
Right.
Even though you finished and you're done, you can still be motzi. Achutz birkat hanenin. I can't drink a glass of grape juice, say Pri Gafen, and say Pri Gafen, drink a glass of grape juice, then say it again for you. Right. I'm already Yotze. But I could do it for a berachas of a mitzvah. Why?
Umibayalan hatam birkat hakos shel kiddush ubirkat hamotzi shel matzah mahu. Okay. Mi amrinan kevan Dechovanihu mevarech odilma birkot lav chovaninhu. Okay, so
we ask about the
following question. We ask about birkat hakos for kiddush, and where presumably in this scenario not everyone is drinking it. And,
the question is, can you say kiddush twice? Is essentially what we're asking.
Right. So if I say kiddush and then I like go home and say kiddush again.
Exactly. Or can I say hamotzi on matzah for you twice, because it's like part of the mitzvah of eating matzah.
Eating matzah. So then maybe right, because then it's not really birkat hanenin at all.
In other words, it's a combination. It's a combo. It's a birkas nenin, a combination with a mitzvah of kiddush Shabbos or eating matzah on Pesach.
Does it have to be that it's a combo, or is it just that like, no, it's just not a birkat nenin at all. It's just a birkat.
Well, no, then we wouldn't have a question. Then we wouldn't have a question, right? We've already established a rule that if it's not a nenin, you can say it many times. But if it's a nenin, you can't. So then we have a question about when it's a combo.
Yeah. Mi amrinan kevan chovanin umevarech o dilma birkot lav chovaninhu. So maybe, right? Maybe
brachot are not a chov, really. You could be yotze matzah without saying a bracha, and maybe you could be yotze, somehow you could be yotze kiddush without saying Pri
well, that one's harder, right?
That one's a bit harder. Maybe you could but
if I don't say motzi on the matzah, but I eat the matzah, I'm still yotze.
Yeah, but maybe you could say kiddush without saying Pri Gafen and just hold a cup and then drink it.
You could say anachana.
No, but yeah, you can say anachal, for example. No, but let's say you want to say anachal. Maybe you said, let's say you already drank. You already said Pri Gafen. I don't know exactly how you'd work it out with the kiddush cup, but maybe it's the was thinking that you already said Pri Gafen. Like somehow you're going to say kiddush on a cup of wine, but not say the Pri Gafen. Would you be yotze kiddush? So you let's say you shouldn't do that. Let's say you shouldn't do that. Maybe you could in a certain circumstance do that. But even if you can't do that, but you did it. So you might be a yotze the mitzvah because you said kiddush on a cup of wine. I don't know. It's not really important. It's not really important. But the point is, that's the Gemara. Continue on.
So then when we hold that like you can.
You can be motze. For kiddush, you could be motze somebody, even if you could go around from house to house saying kiddush for everybody, and it's no problem. But you couldn't go from house to house saying Brei Priya eights on an orange for everybody. Well, actually, there you could, because by going from house to house, you actually have a chiyuv to say bracha again. But you couldn't go from person to person and say Brei Priya eights on an orange for them. You could only say it once in the same room. Okay.
So the Tosfot seem that it's like say that it's like about those specific cases. ובאמת כתבו כל הפוסקים הטעם דבכל ברכת המצוות אדם מוציא חברו היינו משום דכל ישראל ערבים זה בזה. Okay, so and and everybody agrees that the reason that a person can be motzi someone else for birkat mitzvot is that like we're all responsible for one another.
Right. So I could sort of say, a bracha on lulav, and then you would pick up a lulav and you'd be yotze. Well, yeah. I mean, that's maybe not such a good example. I'm not sure exactly what the example I'm thinking, but kiddush. I could say kiddush for you twice because your chiyuv, we're arevim. So what does that mean? Your chiyuv to say kiddush is really my chiyuv to say kiddush. So I have a new kiddush. I have a new chiyuv. I have a new chiyuv to say kiddush. Your kiddush, because we're arevim. But that doesn't go for food.
Yeah.
What?
For food, you can't.
For food, you can't because your stomach is your stomach and my stomach is my stomach. We're not arevim for
that. Okay, so it's as if he's obligated himself. Masha in came for birkat hananin, but that's not true for birkat hananin. V'im kein hacha nami kevan she'in hakos me'akev lav davar shebechova ninhu. And so here, because the kos is not like an essential part of the thing, then that there's no chova. V'he'ach motzi chavero. And so then, how could it be that the Mesader Kiddushin is motzi the chatan?
Right. How are you saying brei priya gafen and then this erusin and then they're drinking? It's true. It looks a lot like kiddush. You could do that for kiddush, right? I could go to somebody's house and say kiddush for them, and then they drink, and I don't take any wine, and I say to brei priya gafen, totally kosher, and therefore this looks a lot like that, but it's really not the same thing because this is only you don't need this cup here. This whole birkat erusin does not require a cup. It's only we'd say it on a cup.
Because it's birkat haneni, you can't do that. Mishlama birkat nisuin efshar kivande to'anin kos hadar havale kidavar shebechova. Masha in came birkat erusin. So for nisuin, right? So for nisuin,
no, we're still talking about erusin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped a line.
Yeah, because you're right. Bishlama.
They both end with hananin. I just got confused. Okay. Ve'im ken hacha nami kavan she'in hakos me'akev lav davar shebechova ninhu v'ha'ach motzi chavero. I read that right.
Yeah, you read that. Bishlama.
Yeah, bishlama birkat nisuin efshar. But maybe it could be that for birkat nisuin you could
definitely.
Right, because that has to have a kos. That's like part of
exactly the Torah and kos.
But for birkat erusin, it's not part of it. It's not an essential part of it. Ve'afshar kivan demikol makom ikar hayayin lav lehinos mechevan chashiv shapir kebirkat mitzvot. V'adayin tzarich liyum. So maybe you just say that like actually what's going on here is that the purpose of the yayin isn't like to drink the yayin. That's not what you're doing. And so therefore it really is a birkat mitzvot.
Right. He said, but then leaves it, but adayin tzarich iyud. He's not satisfied with this answer. He's actually not satisfied. He's saying, I'm not drinking this wine here because it's not a normal circumstance of menin. I'm not trying to enjoy a grape juice here. I just am throwing a cup of wine at this event so that there should be something that I'm saying is bracha on, so to give the bracha added significance, added importance, that we say this birkas erusin, not just in the air. It's like on Yom Kippur. It's always weird. You say, we say the bracha for Yom Kippur without a cup. It's sort of weird. You just say this bracha without a cup. So we don't want to say this bracha without a cup. So we give it a cup. So it's really not required on the one hand. So therefore you shouldn't, but he's saying, but also you could say that it's a purpose to be there. It's not to enjoy it, but just to add the chashivut to the bracha. So it's shapir ke birkat mitzvah. It's like it is like a bracha of a mitzvah. It's part of the whole mitzvah thing that you're doing of saying this bracha. So therefore, you could get away with not drinking. But it's just interesting that, if this thought ever crossed your mind when you're at a wedding, you're not alone. And actually, there are poskim that do drink from the cup before they give it to the chatan and the kala. There are also some who say, well, but she's not going to drink it after I drink from it. So they spill a little bit onto their hand, onto their wrist. This I heard that some poskim this, and then they give the cup to the chatan and kala, and then they drink a little bit of the wine that's on their wrist.
Why does ask the Khatan to make the birthday gift?
Oh, so we'll get into that next. So next week we'll talk about that. What did Yavni say?
Or the kala.
Or the kala. The truth is, anybody could say this bracha. Yes, the kala could say it, and the chatan could say it. We're gonna see. We'll get in when we get to the Shulchan Aruch. We'll see. But but the minhag is not to do that. And we'll see why. You're right. I've been at weddings where the chatan said it, and it seemed to me right. Why shouldn't he say it? It's his thing. It's not the brachas of the Sheva brachas, which are for his honor. That somebody else should say it, about his wedding. He's not going to say how happy it's supposed to be for. It says for the chatan and kala in the bracha. It says chatan imaka. Those ones for sure somebody else should say. But they're there. But why? But this one is for him to say. So it does seem right that he should say it, but we'll see that there are reasons not to say it. But I'll leave that as the exciting hook to get you to come next week. Okay, so I think that's very interesting. And this whole discussion of how exactly the bracha should be, whether it should be lanu, asar lanu, whether it should be mekadesh. We didn't get into the mekadesh. We didn't see the Rambam. Maybe we'll look at that next time. But the Rambam holds that it's just mekadesh Yisrael, and which actually fits to everything the Ran was saying. How it's a general concept of the kedusha of Yisrael, and nothing in that particular. Okay, so we'll leave it off here and have a good rest of your week. Shakayach to everybody.
Uh,
Yashika.
Talk about it. Thank you.